everybody. This video is to help with the multiplying decimals work for this week's packet. Now, depending on which class you were in, you may have learned how to multiply and multiply decimals using a different strategy. So I'm going to go through all three strategies that were used, as well as start with a bit of a shortcut you can use for some of the problems for this week. Now, regardless of whichever strategy you end up using, there's going to be two basic rules to follow when you're multiplying decimals. Rule 1 is ignore the decimal. Not completely, but at least until you have your answer, ignore the decimal, pretend it isn't there. Rule 2 is, at the end, match the decimal places. And what we mean by that is that after you have your answer, you need to make sure that your answer has the same amount of numbers behind the decimal as are in the question. And we'll show more examples about that. The first strategy I'm going to show you might be your favorite, but you can only use it on some of the problems. And it might be your favorite because it requires you not to write down anything. Some of these questions you can do in your head with some math facts and some basic reasoning. So this first question here is from the first math page, and I believe it's question 2. And it says 3 times 300ths. Now, if we look at this problem, this factor has a 3, this factor has zeros in 3. We're also supposed to ignore the decimal. We can just do 3 times 3. That gives us 9. Now we go to rule 2. How many numbers are behind the decimal? 1, 2. Okay, so I need to make sure that my answer has 2 numbers behind the decimal. To do that, we're going to put the decimal out here and put a 0 there. And I now have my answer, 900ths. Some of the questions you can do just like that. Other questions, I really recommend getting a separate sheet of paper or multiple separate sheets of paper. There's just not enough space to do your work neatly. So this next question is on page 3, and this is question 10. I tried to choose one that looked maybe a little bit tricky. This strategy will be the standard algorithm for multiplying numbers. So this is just the standard way to do it, just using numbers. It's really important to keep your numbers straight. One thing I'm also going to note is the way I rewrote the problem here. Allow me to zoom in, sorry. I put this number, 5.24, on top. It helps me and it helps my brain to put whatever number has the most digits on top. So there's 1, 2, 3 digits there, just 1, 2 digits there. So I'm going to put the 3-digit number on top. The first thing we're going to do with this problem is we're going to, well, 1, ignore the decimal. After that, we're going to start by multiplying this 2 by all the numbers above it. So we'll do 2 times 4, that's 8. 2 times 2, that's 4, and 2 times 5, that gives me 10. Before I can multiply this 9, I have to put down a placeholder 0 because I am moving over one place value. I have to put that 0 there before I can multiply. 9 times 4, that gives me 36. Carry my 3. Some people here try to say 3 plus 2 times 9, but that's not how we use this. We're still just going to do 9 times 2, which is 18, plus 3, which is 21. We'll keep that same pattern going. 9 times 5, 45, plus 2, 46, 47. Our final step here, because we've now multiplied all the factors together, is to add our two partial products. So 8 plus 0, that gives me 8. 4 plus 6 gives me 10. 1 plus 1 is 2. 1 plus 7 is 8. 4 plus nothing is 4. We are finally ready for rule number 2, match the decimal places. This is incredibly important. If you don't do this right, your answer will probably be incorrect. So if we look at this question, there is 1 number behind a decimal point and 2 more numbers behind the decimal point here. Our question has 1, 2, 3 numbers behind the decimal point. Therefore, our answer needs to have 1, 2, 3 numbers behind the decimal point. 48.208, or 48 and 208 thousandths. That would be the standard algorithm method. This next method is called the lattice model method. It's my personal favorite. I think it's really cool. If you're quite good at solving the problems using the standard algorithm, I recommend giving this one a try, as it's a lot of fun. I've purposefully not completed drawing out this lattice model so that you could see how it's done. But notice all I've done so far is I've simply separated out the numbers. So 5.24 is separated out across the top. 9.2 is separated across the bottom here. I'm still doing this same problem of 9.2 times 5.24. The next step for making your lattice model is to draw some boxes to separate out your numbers. If you make these boxes too small, things will get crammed together and you'll make some mistakes. So give yourself some room. A common error with kids doing lattice models is that they then get in a hurry and they draw their diagonal lines sloppy and it messes things up. Start at the bottom right corner and diagonally draw a line between those squares. And do this one square at a time. What I mean by that is I'm going to draw that line, pause, pick up my pencil or pen, and then connect the next box, and then draw the line out. I'm also using a Sharpie so that it can show up clearly on the screen. I always recommend using a pencil. The next step for lattice models is to go through and multiply the numbers as if you were multiplying them on a grid or an area model. The only trick is you're going to put the number from the tens place on top of the diagonal and the ones place on the bottom. So I think that'll make more sense as we go along here. 4 times 9 is 36. 4 times 2 is 8. That gives me no tens in 8. This line will be 2 times 9. 2 times 9 is 18. This will be 2 times 2, which is 4. 5 times 9, 45. And 5 times 2, which is 10. So the 1 goes there in the tens place. The next step for lattice model multiplication is to add the diagonals. So you're going to add the diagonals together and put that number off to the side. My first diagonal here just has an 8, so 8. This second one is 6, 0, and 4, which gives me 10. Put down the 0, carry the 1 into the next diagonal section. 3 plus 8 is 11, plus 1 is 12, and then 0. So put down the 2, carry the 1 into the next section. 1 plus 5 is 6, plus 1 is 7, plus 1 is 8. 4 plus nothing is 4. Now you may have noticed we now have our answer. If you do a lattice model correctly, your answer is around the corner of the box. So 48208. 48208, just as it says around here. We're not done yet though. We still have that rule number 2 from the beginning. There are 1, 2, 3 numbers behind the decimal point in the question. 1, 2, 3 numbers behind the decimal point in the question. There is our lattice model multiplication answer. This final method is the area model. So with this model, I've once again separated out by place value, but this might look kind of strange. I'm going to go ahead and once again write down the problem as it appears on the page. This is still problem 10 from page 3. If we did step 1 correctly, which is ignore the decimal points, if those decimal points aren't there, then that 5 becomes 500, the 2 becomes 20, and the 4 is 4. Same with the 9.2. If we ignore the decimal points, I have 90 and 2. Now we're going to multiply and fill in the boxes using our math facts. So 4 times 9 is 36. and we left out 1 0. 4 times 2 is 8. 20 times 90, let's just do 2 times 9 is 18, and then make sure you add in your 1, 2 zeros. Wow, 500 times 90. Let's just do 5 times 9 is 45, and add in 1, 2, 3 zeros. Now we have 20 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4. Add in your 1 0. Here we have 500 times 2. Well, let's just do 5 times 2 is 10, but we still have to add in 2 zeros. The final step here for the area model is to then add together all your partial products. It's a very common way to make a mistake with this problem is to then either leave one of these numbers out or not write them out in line so that they end up being incorrect. So you have to make sure that you add up all your numbers. I also like to start with the biggest number and then go to the smallest. It just helps me keep track of everything so I don't forget some numbers. Some people also like to add up one row and then the other row and then add up those two smaller amounts. Whatever works as long as you're adding up all the numbers and you have everything written down correctly. A quick double check is to also say 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 6 boxes here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 numbers here. Our first column is 8 plus a whole bunch of zeros is 8. Our second column is 4 plus 6 plus more zeros is 10. Put down the 0. Carry the 1. 1 plus 8 is 9. 9 plus 3 is 12. Put down the 2. Carry the 1. 5, 6, 7, 8. And then 4. Once again, if we look back at the question, there are 1, 2, 3 numbers behind the decimal. 1, 2, 3. And we have 48.208. Make sure as you're doing these problems, if you get stuck, go back to this video and watch it, hit pause, do some problems on your own, see if you get the right answer. But also feel free to email your teacher with any questions. It does help us if you tell us the specific page and the question that you are having a hard time with. That does make it easier for us to assist you. Good luck, have fun, and we hope to see you soon. We miss you guys.